Let's talk about color grading. In our industry, colors are what set us apart. Wedding videos are to have a certain aesthetic that we all try to achieve, and a large part of that aesthetic comes from our wedding video colors. I see a lot of filmmakers who spend almost zero time coloring their videos, and their videos look amateur and unattractive. If you can learn to color grade your videos where it's graded beautifully and aesthetically, you'll separate yourself from 80% of the market. Color should enhance your video, not distract from it. We live in a world where presets are huge and LUTs. For those who don't know, a LUT, meaning lookup table, is essentially just a preset for video. A lot of videographers slap a LUT on their videos and don't even bother to color grade. Don't do this. There are tons of great LUT packs out there, hundreds, probably thousands. I've used a lot of them, but in the last few months, I've actually stopped using LUTs. And I want to briefly tell you why before I show you how to color grade. Your colors are part of your brand, so be your own. A while ago, I came across White and Revery's LUT pack. I bought it and loved it. At first, I would just slap their LUTs on my videos and call it good. And to be honest, it looked pretty great. But then I wanted to be unique and have my own colors. So I started lowering the intensity of their LUTs and spent more time personally color grading the footage, until eventually I just stopped using LUTs altogether and just spent more time coloring each film individually, which is how it should be. If I ever use a LUT now, it's to enhance my color grade, not be my color grade. And I'll use them at only 10% intensity. White and Revery's LUT pack is one of the only packs I've been very pleased with, and I highly recommend it. There's a link below to buy them for 10% off, but again, sometimes the LUTs just don't work with some footage. Sometimes it just doesn't match. I was actually in the process myself of creating LUTs because of how many requests I received. I've spent the last 6 months trying to make LUTs that I'm happy with, but whenever I apply them to more than one wedding, they look disgusting and I start over. For me, my creative personal opinion, every wedding is unique with different lighting and colors and moods, and every wedding needs to be personally graded for that specific aesthetic, which is what I do now. Please understand, I'm not against you using LUTs. I think they're a great tool to learn what colors you like and also to enhance your videos. But after using many LUTs, I personally have decided to learn how to color grade to get the look I want without needing a LUT. With that being said, I'm still planning on creating LUTs for you because I know how helpful they can be for you to teach you what colors are pleasing, so just keep an eye out for them, but they're not ready yet. I just don't have them in a place where I'm proud of selling them. Alright, let's dive into color grading. I'm going to just let you peek over my shoulder as I color grade these 3 clips. I'll talk about my process as I color grade, and that should give you some valuable insight as to how I get my colors the way I do without using LUTs. Also, below is a link to download these clips if you want to follow along. I use Adobe Premiere Pro, but a lot of these principles can be applied to Final Cut Pro X and DaVinci Resolve, which eventually I'll make tutorials for as well. But even if you don't use Premiere, pay attention because the principles will still apply. Here we go. Alright, so I know I said we look at 3 clips, but we're actually going to look at 4. Just because I just shot this footage last night and it's gorgeous and I haven't even touched it yet. So I want to show you guys my process in going through it from start to finish. These 3 clips have already color graded the way I love. So real quick, here is a raw look at before the color grade. This clip wasn't super drastic, but as you can see, it definitely looks more graded and more of that orange and teal look, which I feel like fits the vibe a lot better. Also, none of these clips are going to be color graded with LUTs. This is all just through color grading. Here, this is also a slight change, not a whole lot, definitely brighter, and then you can tell the greens got a little bit warmer and more moodier, and the blues definitely changed from like a purplish hue to a more aqua hue. This one's a pretty big color grade. As you can see, the greens are very blue. His suit was very blue, and then we made it warm and less intense. The blue is more of a neutral blue, as you can see there. And then for this clip, we haven't even touched it yet, but it should be gorgeous. Okay, so starting with this one. Okay, so first things first, I feel like this footage is a little bit warm. We're already in the desert and we're already dealing with a lot of oranges. And so I am going to lower this to -8. And as you can see, it didn't do a whole lot, but if you look at their whites and the skin tones, it definitely played a little bit of a role. Just take out some of that orange. So definitely a lot better already just by taking out some of that orange tint in the whites. A key to making your footage look gorgeous and graded without distracting is to make sure you keep your whites white as opposed to some off color. So as you can see, it was already a little bit off color, and I made it just a little bit more white. It's already pretty well exposed. I might just brighten it just a little bit. As you can see, not a whole lot, but just make it a little bit more bright, because I'm going to darken the shadows and add a lot of contrast in a second. We'll bump this up to about here. And then we want to take the highlights down so you can see the peaking. We want to take the highlights down quite a lot. So as you can see, just taking the highlights down just a little bit allows for a cleaner, more consistent image. Then these shadows are a little bit dark, and we're gonna add an S-curve in a second. So I want to bring the shadows up to really help with the dynamic range of the image. It looks a little bit more flat now, which gives us a little bit more liberty when we're dealing with the curves. And then we're gonna lower the highlights even more, lower the whites and the blacks, which will add some contrast there. Boom. So there we can see we've only used the basic correction so far, and it looks just a little more even. It's not as shadowy, it's a little bit more even across the board, which will give us a lot more freedom in a second. Okay, so in the creative tab you can add a LUT, which we're not going to do. So I'm going to raise the highlights just a little bit, and then we'll add some contrast right there. So as you can see before and after, we've evened out the highlights and the shadows of the image, and now we're just adding contrast, organic contrast. And now it gets to the fun part, the color correcting. So these three things is what I use most of the time. So first I'm going to grab the blues right here. This is hue versus hue. So I'm grabbing only the blues in the image, which is this guy and his jacket, and I'm going to raise that a little bit to a more of an aqua tint. So you can see if I raise it a lot, it gets green, lower gets pink. We want to raise it to it's just a little bit more aqua. As you can see the difference there. Beautiful. But then also with those blues, we're going to want to desaturate them a little bit just to make it a little bit more moody. You can make it look nice and poppy, but I personally like it a little bit faded. And then we're going to desaturate the yellows. I just don't like yellows in general as a color in videos. And you can look at her flowers, it really changes. So I want to make it just more of a green. So I'm going to desaturate them quite a bit. And I'm also, you can't really desaturate a whole lot on the oranges, on the reds, because that's their skin tones. But they look a little bit pasty, so I'm just going to desaturate it a tiny bit. So boom, there you go. And then I'll go into vignette. And this is a personal preference as well. I like to add a vignette to my image. I feel like it draws your attention inward before and after. So boom, there you have a look at before and after this. Again, you'll notice how simple it was to grade this. You can even mess around more with it by making the reds and the oranges a little bit more, more of a tint, but I don't really want to. You'll notice how quick it was to do all of that. It's just subtle grading. Remember, you want it to be graded but not distracting. You want the focus to be the subject, not the colors. This looks beautiful. It enhances the subject, it enhances the scene. It doesn't distract from it, and it doesn't feel out of place. It matches the scene. You got your blues and your reds in the desert, and then your whites are nice and white. So there you go. Moving on to the next clip. All right, so here we have before and after. All we really do is brighten it, make it a little bit more warm, and adjust the blues. And keep the whites white. All right, so I'm going to turn this off. Starting with our basic tab, we're going to make it a little bit more warm. Put it at 4.9, and then we want their skin tones to remain a little bit greener, so we're going to put it at negative 4.9. You might not be able to tell from your end, but I can see it come through in the greens and in the skin tones and in the dress, just making it more warm and white. But we're just going to raise it a little bit to 1.9. This gives us an accurate exposure, and then we're going to darken it later with contrast, shadows, blacks, and S-curves. We're going to put this all the way at 25-ish. So far as you can see, we're just raising the exposure but keeping the detail. And then we want to delete the highlights, so I'm going to put that about 47. Raise the shadows to 1. Again, lower the whites and lower the blacks ever so slightly. So boom, there's our before and after just on the basic correction tab. We'll skip past creative. I'm not going to do a whole lot to the S-curve here, maybe just a little bit of punch. Love that. There you can see the difference the S-curve makes. So for this one, we're going to do two things. We're going to grab the greens and the yellows, and we're going to warm them up just a little bit, just ever so slightly. So you can see just the difference that made. Personal preference, you might like the more green look. I like the more warm look with my greens. And then I'm going to grab his suit, the blue, and also make it a little bit more teal. Boom. And I'm going to grab those same colors and desaturate them both. So grab the greens and the yellows, desaturate them a tiny bit, grab his blues, and desaturate those a little bit as well. And then to make his suit pop a little bit more, I might grab the Luma and just raise the blues. So if you can see, that's what it does. just gonna raise it a little bit more. And then the vignette, I'll just put this at -3, and there you go. It's beautiful, before and after. Again, color grading is a personal style, personal choice. You may not like that grade, but that's the look I love. Okay, so we will turn off this, and here's the raw file that we'll be dealing with. So for this grade, we're gonna make it a lot warmer. We're gonna put it up to about 25. Much, much warmer, as you can see, but that's the look we're going for. But now the whites are turning pinkish, so we're gonna lower the tint to about -5. That way the whites just stay a little bit more white, which we'll adjust more in a second. Exposure looks fine, but we're going to make it a bit more moodier by adding some contrast and then bumping up the highlights to 21. And also the shadows to 22 to make it more even. Bump up the whites to 23 and then lower the blacks to add some contrast. Okay, so there we have before and after so far, looking pretty good. We'll do a little S-curve here. And then we'll grab our greens and warm them up a lot. But now they look a little bit yellow, so we're going to grab them again and just desaturate them. Boom. And then with his suit, I just don't like the color, so we're going to make it more teal. Not a whole lot, and then we're going to desaturate the blues a lot, like this. And then I'm going to darken it, maybe lighten it. I'd rather it be that color than the bright blue it was. So there you have a before and after of adjusting our greens and our blues. And then I'll add my vignette. So boom, there you have it. There is our warmer color grade with the warm greens, warm skin tones. This is definitely one of the more popular looks in wedding films right now, is this color. It looks pretty good. Okay, here we go. This is my latest and greatest. This is a bridal shoot from yesterday with my buddy Sam. Gorgeous location, lots of greens, some yellows. Just overall gorgeous image without even needing a whole lot of color grade. So let's see what I do with this. So first, let's see. It's looking pretty good. I might cool it down just a little bit because I like the cooler look. Maybe add some little tint of green. Brighten it just a little bit. His black suit is a little bit tricky to work with, so just raise the shadows, add some contrast, adjust the highlights a little bit, and not a whole lot I want to do to that, honestly. Just make it a little bit brighter. Okay, then go to the curves, make my beautiful S curve. Boom, there's the S curve. And then the fun begins. So we can let's try the warmer look, see how that looks. We'll take the greens and we will warm them up a little bit. So we can make them bluer, which might be a cool look, or make them warmer and then desaturate them. That looks pretty good to me. Then we'll take the blues and I'm going to make them a little bit more teal in the background. And then desaturate them a little bit. Again, there's not a whole lot of colors I want to change here. So here's just the colors adjusted slightly. And to me that looks pretty good. Add a vignette. So there you have a before and after look at that color. What you can also do if you want to get really fancy, go to your HSL secondary and select the greens. Hit color gray. And then just make sure you grab all the greens in the image. There you go, and then denoise it and blur it. And then you can adjust them however you want. So we could darken them, which I really love that look. Make them maybe make them more warmer. Add a pinkish tint to it. Add some blue maybe, or some, so you can add all types of things. I kind of like adding blue to it. So there's a look with and without HSL secondary. However, the trees now look whitish, so I might take that off a little bit. So there you go. I just darkened the greens, which I really like, and I can come in here and desaturate them more, or less if I want to. Boom. So there you go. So there is a look at me color grading 4 of my favorite clips. Here are the before and afters one more time. There are so many ways to color grade, so it's just up to you how you want to do yours. But that is a little peek inside of how I color correct my footage. So there you have a quick look at how I color grade my footage. Yes, your picture profile might affect this process slightly, like if you're shooting flatter or in D-Log or overly saturated, but we have an entire other video about picture profiles, so check it out and adjust accordingly. That's it for color grading. Again, I don't hate LUTs. I just think every wedding video is so unique and deserves its own unique look. If you're still wanting to buy LUTs right now, check out the link below for my favorite LUT pack by White and Reverie, and there's a coupon for 10% off. And if you guys have any further questions, please let me know.